Mr. President, part of the discussion also on that particular part of the subject revolved around how one would determine a cutoff because there is a big difference in the values of all of these items. It also, pardon me, and I have the statute in front of me as well. Law enforcement is not looking at the possibility of returning large ticket items. I think we would all agree that they're not going to do something foolish about that. But choosing a dollar amount or trying to define consumer goods becomes a little bit complicated as well. So the law enforcement people who were there to discuss the ability to return property promptly are interested in being able to do just that without having to hold it until there's some answer to the question about who owns it. If it's my billfold and my driver's license is in it and it has a photo on it and I'm identifying myself, it's mine. But that we shouldn't have to wait until that police officer has an opportunity to meet with a judge. So the discussion was there briefly, but the real big difficulty was in trying to define that. I think we also need to recognize that our law enforcement officials are professionals who know what they're doing here. Their goal is to return property that is in which the ownership is not disputed, a bicycle or a purse or whatever it might happen to be, household goods, as quickly as possible to somebody who needs it right away. If my purse has been stolen and my car keys are in it, I can't go home. So anyway, the committee did put a fair amount of time into talking about this, and the decision was that it sounds like it's a really good deal for attorneys, but not so good for the person whose bike or purse might have been stolen, and law enforcement assured us that they're not observing any real challenges with this whole thing.
Further discussion? Senator Armstrong.
Yeah, Mr. President, I don't disagree with those small ticket items. I guess I would have a question as to if they're not being returned now, because I believe they are. The problem is you're removing the language that tells you what your remedy is on a dispute of ownership. And that's what you're removing, regardless if it's good law. I mean, I have as much respect for law enforcement as anybody. Later on the 14th order, I'll be carrying a bill singing their praises. But this is a question of law. Disputed ownership and alleged ownership of property is something that is determined by a judge and should still remain to be determined by a judge.
Senator Hogue.
Yeah, Mr. President, I continue to think that those two sections still have use, like the previous speaker said, for cases where the property is stolen. And as I read the bill, Mr. President, and listened to part of the committee deliberations, I think part of the problem for the folks who brought the bill forward and for the committee is I think they're laboring under an apprehension that there's a conflict between seized property under Chapter 29-31.1 and these two sections. And I just don't think there is a conflict. I think they both have separate independent purposes, although they're related. And I don't think we ought to repeal them. I think there's good reason to keep them. And so I would urge the Senate to vote no on this.
Further discussion? Hearing none, the question is on the final passage of House Bill 1297. Would the Secretary please open the key? Each senator record your vote. All senators have voted. Any senator wishing to change their vote, Secretary will close the key. The final tally on House Bill 1297 reveals 7 senators voting yea, 39 senators voting nay, 1 senator absent and not voting. The bill is lost.